Hey y'all, it's David Ducker coming back at you, and today I'm going to be talking about how to explore a sandbox. I've done videos on how to build a sandbox, how to build a political web, but I haven't done one on how to explore that, and that's very important. Because one of the problems that I had early on is information overload. There's this really deep, rich, detailed world. There's a lot going on, but you can't have your players get overwhelmed by that. There's too many people to remember, there's too many factions, religions, there's too much to cram into their nuggets. So you need to ease into the sandbox. So what you need to do, first off, first session, you've made your team, they're somewhat familiar with the setting. You drop them into the sandbox. They each get their intro scenes, of course. You bring the party together, Magnificent Seven Samurai style. And once they're together, you can give them these options. It's like, okay, you're in the city of Nome. What are you doing? Ask them that. Let them take the initiative. If they don't, go back to your pacing. I did a video on pacing and say, well, do you go to the Arcane University, or do you go to the Temple, or the Royal Palace, or to the Fortress of the Dwarfs, or do you try to seek out the Thieves Guild? Throw them out all these different options that you've prepped that are in your sandbox. Here are some things you could be doing, and allow them to pick one of those things and go through to it. Now, each of these things, and this is part of your prep, should have some kind of quest or storyline, a plot hook attached, at least one per group. So when they come in, hit your keystone NPC. So let's say they go to the temple. Hit your high priest and his aide. You've got to have at least 2 NPCs per faction for that political strife. Hopefully more, but at least 2. And for the first time you meet them, maybe just stick to the main 2. So you meet the high priest, and the high priest is an ancient, wizened man, and he tells them, skeletons, risen up in the tomb, and you need to serve the church and go down into the tomb and lay them back in their graves. And now you've got the quest. You've met 2 NPCs. He's told you a little bit about the faction. He's giving you a quest. You go down, you hit that combat, which is pacing. It draws the pacing out. Stretch it out. Because you don't want to overwhelm them right off the bat. At the end of the campaign, there'll be enough info to overwhelm them, but because they've eased into it, they can manage it so easily. So you hit the locale. Hit the NPCs, the quest, the faction. Then they go down into those catacombs. You have your combat scenes. They show off their skills, and perhaps they learn something at the end of the quest. They find an orb down there in the crypts, an orb, scrawled with sigils most foul. Just looking at it kind of makes you, It's like, why am I creeped out by all these runes? Like, I don't know, but I just am. It's like, I don't even want to touch it. I got it. You take it back to the high priest, or you don't, and you pocket it, let's tuck that away. And that can lead into a later plot hook. But that could be your whole first session. All you've done is intro the temple, the 2 NPCs. That's it. That's all you need. And use combat as filler for the rest of it, so you don't have information overload, so you don't overwhelm them. Next session, you recap, you come back, and, the priest thanks them, he gives them a reward of some sort. You may call upon me for a blessing in the future, my child, and it shall be granted. A great boon from Sigmar. Whatever that is. And they go out and say, okay, well, we got this orb now. Maybe we'll go take it to the Arcane University. And you start repeating this process. So at the Arcane University, you meet, again, 2 NPCs. You see what the university looks like. You learn a little bit about the place, and then maybe the mage there will have some ideas for you. You know, he could come in and he could be talking about this orb. I've seen it before. That's my orb, in fact. It was stolen from me a fortnight ago, and I believe it was stolen by the vicious thieves gang, and they took it out of here through the sewers, and I lost their trail when I refused to enter the sewers and soil my fine robes. You must investigate now and pick up the track. Find out how they infiltrated. And then they can come through and go down into the sewers, have some perhaps sewer encounters, and fight some rogues, find the hideout. Maybe they find a scroll down there, a letter, a piece of parchment that says, you know, go steal this orb, plant it in the catacombs. Right? And they can bring that back to the wizard. He can say, oh, this is news most foul. I truly owe you a great boon and a debt of gratitude for finding this information out. Now we must find this individual whose name is signed at the bottom. Right? So, again, that can be a whole session. You know, 2 NPCs, the faction, the combat as filler, and that's it. You know, and slowly you learn about your sandbox. And now these elements don't have to be linear. They could have gone to the wizards first and gone through, fought the rogues, got the letter, and they said, oh, shit, this, according to this letter, the orb is in the catacombs. And then they go to the temple. And then they go on that storyline, right? So it's a sandbox. I mean, that's 2 quests in the sandbox. But you want to have more. Perhaps the local thieves gang, you know, they want to know who did this because it wasn't their thieves. Maybe they're even getting blamed for it. You know, and they're saying, it wasn't us that did this. We want to find the people that did this just as bad as you do. You know, but the only way they could get all of our equipment, because they didn't steal it from us, because we're thieves. You can't steal from a thief, son. But they probably got it from the fortress of the dwarfs. The dwarfs are the city guard, and they confiscated all of our equipment over the years. They're the only ones who could create these false thieves, these guys who are armed like us, but they're not us. So who robbed the dwarfs? Or did the dwarfs give this equipment out? And then they'll send you on a quest against the dwarfs, perhaps. And maybe you find out that the dwarf captain is a corrupt cultist, and he set this whole thing up so he could discredit the human gods. And if you'd gone, if you'd gone to him first, then maybe he would still have attacked you because he knows you're very pious, or maybe he would have tried to, tell you how the human gods are corrupt and just convert you without mentioning what he's converting you to. Just try to weaken your faith. So, it doesn't matter which one you go to first, but it can lead you through the sandbox slowly. And then by the 5th session, now you know the wizards, you know the priests, you know the thieves, you know the dwarfs. Probably because you killed the old captain and set a new dwarf up in his stead. So now you know all these 4 power players. So in session 5, they can start politicking against each other. Maybe the wizard doesn't like the high priest, or maybe the rogue lieutenant, second in command, is trying to usurp his boss. And now they all know you're valuable, that you can help them. Then you start getting into this political web. Right? So this is just about taking it slow so that, once you've invested the time and got through all the filler, you can have the great political stories and the role-playing, the depth and complexity you want. It takes time to set up. And I usually leave about half the campaign to set it up and then half the campaign to knock it down. So if we're running for 50 sessions, we're going to have 25 sessions where we get to know everybody in the world and then 25 sessions where they all fight each other, and you pick sides, and you help your friends, and you hurt your enemies. You convince people to go from your enemy to your friend, or vice versa. And you switch the sides around, because you have to have the power as a player character to affect the world. Otherwise, you might as well just railroad through. So I just wanted to do a video on that, on taking it slow, on how to get into the sandbox, right? Because when I first played through as a GM, I only had the end game politics, which are great, and that's the part I really enjoy, but it was information burnout. My players went to the high priest, and then they went to the wizard, and they're both trying to convince them to fight each other, and they're like, I don't know you, I have no connection to you, I don't care, and it's too much to remember all at once anyway, and it was a mess, I mean, we still had fun with it, but the amount of fun, it was only down here when it should be like way up here. If you know everyone and you're invested and you care, if you helped this young guard captain come up and you set him in place there, and now his wife is cuckolded by an enchantress, that could be awesome. And you're like, oh, should I tell him to kill his wife? Should I tell him to forgive her? Is he going to exile himself or divorce her? Like, what can I do to help this poor dwarf? Or maybe you're like, oh, I made a mistake. He's clearly weak. He can't control his wife. And he thinks he can control the guard. I'm going to tell him, you should exile yourself, son. Get out of here. Away with you. And I'm going to set this other guy up in his place. Whatever you want to do. But you need to understand the situation. So that's all I got to say about that. Well, let me know if you have any tips for getting into the sandbox, those first 5 or 10 sessions, how you do it. And leave that in the comments below. And until I see you again, good day and good game.